Imagine this, Bill Cosby, America's beloved TV DAD, sitting in a courtroom looking like if walls are closing in. But here's the kicker, it's not the trial everyone expected. No, this time, it's not just the prosecution's case that has a very own edge, it's something much darker, something shocking that Regina King just dropped in front of a live jury. What did she say? You won't believe it. Cosby's poker face cracked wide open the moment that evidence hit screen. Boom! The room froze, and guess what? This wasn't just any old piece of evidence. This was game-changing. The crowd gasped. Cosby's flowers turned pale, and Cosby himself, well, he looked like he'd just seen a ghost. But here's where it gets real like crazy. The evidence, it was leaked, smuggled out of the courtroom before Union even knew it existed. Now it's out. Regina King, she's not just Aster. She's the star in this courtroom drama, and she just handed the world a bombshell no one saw coming. So, what did she say? What's on that footage? Stay with me because this isn't just about Cosby anymore, it's about a Hollywood empire on the brink of collapse. Keep watching, you won't believe what happens next. The courtroom was packed to the brim. Cameras flashed like storm clouds around a lightning strike. And outside the streets were swarming, with protesters chanting, "Justice for Malcolm." The sound was deafening, but the real storm was happening inside the courthouse where young man, Bill Cosby, was about to face the consequences of a decade-or-so-long secret he thought would remain hidden forever. Regina King, the woman who was about to change everything, sat in the front row. But she wasn't just a spectator. Oh no, she wasn't there to just watch the trial unfold. She had something to say, something so explosive it could bring the entire empire Cosby built crumbling to the ground. The truth, the one Bill Cosby thought had buried deep. It was coming to light in real time in front of an audience that couldn't look. Wait, but let's rewind a bit. How did we get here? How did Cosby, the man once known as America's dad, find himself sitting in that courtroom with his future hanging in the balance? Let's talk about Cosby's past, the one who worked so hard to hide. For years, Cosby was America's golden boy, the charming fatherly figure who made U.S. law on The Cosby Show, who built an empire on wholesome values and family-friendly programming. But behind the scenes, a completely different story was unfolding. A story of manipulation, abuse, and secrets. So dark they would eventually destroy everything he worked for. We all know about the allegations, the numerous women who came forward over the years, each one telling a chilling similar tale of harassment, assault, and intimidation, but it didn't stop there. Oh no! Cosby's network of power ran deep. He wasn't just hiding behind Hollywood doors. He had friends here in the media, in law enforcement, even in politics. All of them willing to shield him, willing to protect his reputation. For years, those secrets remained buried. Women's voices were ignored, their accusations silenced by powerful forces. That is until one brave woman decided enough was enough. One voice started a ripple effect and the world began to listen. And then came the trial, the moment when everything would be exposed, but even then, Cosby's lawyers did everything in their power to keep the truth under wraps. At first, they succeeded, but this trial was different. The bombshell Regina King was about to drop. Well, it was about Toshider, the carefully constructed fake Duff man who had everyone fooled for decades. Now, let's talk about Regina King, a woman whose words today would change the course of this trial. If y'all thought she was just an actress, think again. Regina wasn't there to just watch show, she was taking the stand. Her testimony, it was more than just a statement, it was a reckoning. The kind of reckoning Bill Cosby never saw coming. Regina King had been quietly fighting for the truth for years. She wasn't just speaking on behalf of the victims, though. She was speaking on behalf of justice itself. She had spent months, maybe even years, getting ready for this day, the day when Cosby's world would come crashing down in front of the entire world. But what was her role in all of this? How did she find herself at center of this courtroom drama? Before she took the stand, Regina had already made headlines for standing up for the truth, for calling out the system that had protected powerful men like Cosby for too long. She was ready, she had done her homework. She knew the facts and she wasn't going to hold back. The whole world was watching her. Theron went silent when she opened her mouth. She wasn't just speaking for herself, she was speaking for every victim that had been silenced, every truth that had been buried. Cosby's defense team, they were already starting to panic. What? Because they knew Theron's Regina spoke. There would be no turning back. Cosby's carefully curated image gone. The man who had once been America's dad would be unmasked in front of millions. But before Regina even took stand, something massive happened. It wasn't just her words that had the courtroom on edge. No, it was the footage. The evidence that was about to be introduced was so explosive it had the power to end everything. Leaked footage from the crime scene where Malcolm Jamal Warner died suddenly surfaced. Not from the official court recordings, not from the controlled footage the public was allowed to see. No, this footage was from somewhere else, somewhere secret. A grainy, shaky video that showed Malcolm alive just before his death. You could hear his voice, though it was hard to make out. The wind whipped through his words, but images were crystal clear. In the background of that footage, a shadowy figure watching, lurking, possibly responsible for what came next. Was that figure Cosby's doing? Was this moment it all fell apart? The courtroom was in shock as the footage played, but it wasn't just the footage it was raising eyebrows. No, the rail kicker was the timestamp. Someone had altered the video, and not just any simple edits. It was sophisticated, and whoever did it knew exactly what they were trying to hide. 6 minutes were missing. 6 minutes of crucial evidence, and no one knew who was behind the edit. Regina King sat in her seat watching the courtroom react to this shocking new evidence. She could feel the tension rise as the lawyer scrambled to make sense of the newly leaked footage. Was this the turning point in the trial? Was this the moment when the jury would finally see the truth? Cosby's face, usually composed, looked like it had just been slapped. His jaw clenched, his chin shook. The weight of the moment hit him hard, and for the first time, the man who once had it all, the man who had been able to smile his way out of trouble for decades, looked vulnerable. But it wasn't over yet. Cosby's legal team rushed to discredit the footage, trying to downplay its significance. But there's the thing, once the truth is out, it's out. And you can't just put the lid back on Pandora's box. Now, as Cosby and his lawyers scrambled to dismiss the footage, it was time for Regina King to take the stand. This was the moment the world had been waiting for. But what would she say? Would she drop the finale bombshell? The courtroom was on edge. Cosby, visibly rattled, wastering to hold his ground. But Regina was about to shatter his last defense. The courtroom buzzed with a mix of excitement and anticipation. But Cosby was stone-faced, still trying to hold onto whatever shred of dignity he had left. His lawyers were frantically whispering among themselves, no doubt strategizing on how to deal with the latest bombshell. The leaked footage had sent shock waves through the courtroom, and now the real drama was about to unfold. The eyes of the world were on Bill Cosby, and the man once loved by millions was now being exposed as something much darker. Regina King's words still hung in the air like a bomb waiting to go off. She had just taken a stand, and as the cameras zoomed in her face, you could feel the weight of the moment. Her calm demeanor only made her words hit harder. The room fell into a complete silence as she opened her mouth. This wasn't just a celebrity speaking out, this was justice speaking loud and clear. But let's rewind. What exactly did Regina King say? What made this testimony so explosive? It wasn't just what she revealed, but how she revealed it with such quiet strength it made the courtroom shake. For months, people had speculated about what Regina King knew. Her association with Cosby's past had never been a secret. After all, both had been part of the Hollywood elite for years. But this was different. She was finally ready to spill the truth, and the world was listening. No more pretending, no more hiding behind the shiny veneer of Hollywood glam. Regina's testimony started with an almost casual tone. but the content was far from ordinary. She spoke of Cosby's secret meetings, his sinister plans, and how he had used his power to manipulate and control people in the industry for decades, the way she described it. Did everything sound calculated and cold? She didn't mince words. Cosby's efforts to suppress the truth were laid bare. Regina talked about his ability to influence people behind closed doors. How his charm and influence were part of the reason no one had ever spoken up before, but now she was the voice of it. Would expose the truth. She described Cosby's power as something almost godlike in Hollywood. A man who could walk into a room and make everyone fall in line. Behind that mask of respectability, Regina revealed something far darker. Cosby had a tight grip on the entertainment world, using his fame and wealth to avoid scrutiny. But Regina said that's all about change. She wasn't just talking about Cosby's fate, she was talking about a system that had been broken for years, and she was here to fix it. Regina's words weren't the only thing that had the room on edge. The footage, it was just the beginning. The evidence had been leaked, but it was only one piece of the puzzle. And as the prosecution filed more, the truth began to hither. Cosby's lawyers could argue that footage was manipulated, but there was no denying what was shown. Thegrainy. Footage from the beach where Malcolm Jamal Warner was last seen alive had raised more questions than answers. The footage was damning. Malcolm was seen pacing frantically, talking to men in dark jackets. The sound was distorted, but the body language was clear. They were in the middle of something, a high-stakes conversation, but the real shocker came when the missing 6 minutes came into play. That stamp showed an odd gap, 6 whole minutes gone. And that wasn't just a coincidence. Someone had deliberately televised it. What? And what happened during those missing minutes? The room buzzed as theory circulated. Was Cosby involved in the editing of this footage? Had he been trying to cover up something more sinister than anyone realized? The more the defense tried to cover it up, the more questions arose. Leaked footage, altered timestamps, and now their row kicker. Regina King's testimony about what she had seen behind closed doors. Cosby had tried to maintain his public persona as America's dad, but the truth was far more chilling. Outside the courthouse, the world was watching. Newsvans lined the streets. Reporters were broadcasting live from every corner, and protesters filled the streets with signs reading, "Justice for Malcolm and Cosby is guilty." The public's reaction was swift. Everyone had an opinion. Some believed in the power of justice, while others wondered whether the system would truly hold Hollywood's elite accountable. Anonymous sources continued to leak more evidence to the media, revealing even more damning details about Cosby's history. From his treatment of women to the alleged payoffs, threats that kept people silent for decades, the public was furious. Social media exploded with hashtags like #CosbyExposed and #JusticeFormal. People wanted answers and they wanted them fast, and it wasn't just the public. Other Hollywood figures who had previously remained silent began to speak out, some expressing support for the victims, others quietly acknowledging that Cosby's hold on Hollywood had been real. The tide was turning and Cosby was caught in the middle of it. But the question remained, would the truth finally come to light? As the days passed, Cosby's legal team went into damage control mode. They tried to discredit the footage, claiming it was fabricated, but with each new piece of evidence, their arguments became weaker. Every time they tried to redirect the narrative, the prosecution slammed them with something even more explosive. Cosby himself sat in the courtroom, visibly rattled. The once-confident man, who had managed to weasel his way out of trouble time and time again, now looked like a man who realized his empire was crumbling around him. He wasn't in control anymore. His fate was in the hands of the jury, and those hands slowly tightening around him. The defense tried to maintain some semblance of control by attacking the credibility of the witnesses and evidence, but the truth was starting to stick. Regina King's words had hit home, and the jury was already feeling the pressure of the case. As the day progressed, Cosby's defense team grew more desperate, their objections growing louder and more frantic. Cosby could feel the walls closing in. The room had turned into a battlefield, and the stakes were higher than ever. The tension in the courtroom was almost palpable. Every single person in that room could feel it. Something was about to happen. Bill Cosby, the man who had once been America's beloved Tivdad, was now staring at the downfall of his entire career. And it wasn't just this career that was on the line, it was his freedom. Regina King had exposed the truth, but the final pieces of the puzzle were still being revealed. As the defense team struggled to maintain any semblance of control, the prosecution was relentless. The evidence was irrefutable, the truth undeniable. And no, Cosby's past was staring him in the face. As the trial reached its climax, a new piece of evidence emerged, and it was nothing short of explosive. A mysterious USB drive was submitted to the court. And when the judge allowed its contents to be revealed, the entire courtroom went silent. What was on it? The audience held their breath, and even the defense team seemed nervous as the files were opened. The contents of the drive were beyond anyone's imagination. It wasn't just about Cosby's involvement in the crime. It was about everything he had done to cover it up. Emails, private tech conversions, confidential meetings. It was all there, meticulously documented. There were files detailing payments, instructions to silence victims, and hidden recordings that had never seen the light of day. And among all that, the most damning evidence was a secret recording of Cosby himself. The voice was unmistakable. It was his. The tapper revealed his involvement in the planning of the crime, where he casually discussed hiring someone to take care of things. The details were chilling. If anything happens to him, Cosby's voice said chillingly, make sure it looks like an accident. No one should ever know the truth. The room was in shock. Cosby's empire, built on years of deceit, manipulation, and intimidation, was now crumbling at his feet. This recording, along with the other documents, sealed his fate. There was no denying it now. The tapes didn't just tell a story, they confirmed. News of the evidence spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with reactions as millions of people reacted to the shocking revelation. Hashtags like #CosbyExposed and #TruthUncovered trended worldwide, with people expressing their outrage and disbelief. Cosby, once a national treasure, was now seen as a villain. A man who had built his career on lies while destroying the lives of others in the process. But the fallout didn't stop at Cosby. The ripple effect was far-reaching. Hollywood was under scrutiny. Cosby was guilty, then how many others had been protected for so long? How many other powerful figures had used their influence to hide their own sins? This trial wasn't just about Cosby anymore. It was about the entire system that had allowed powerful men to get away with abuse, corruption, and insolence. As the final day of the trial approached, the prosecution was preparing to deliver their closing arguments. Every word they spoke, every piece of evidence they presented had brought them closer to the truth. Now, as they stood before the jury, they knew they were on the brink of history. The prosecutor's voice echoed through the courtroom, steady and filled with conviction. The evidence speaks for itself. Bill Cosby manipulated and controlled everyone around him. He used his fame and power to silence victims, to bury the truth, and to continue his reign of terror for years. We are heredity not just for justice, but for the truth. And the truth, ladies and gentlemen, is that Bill Cosby is guilty. The words hit hard. The jury's eyes were fixed on the prosecutor, nodding in agreement as they absorbed the weight of what had just been said. Cosby, now looking like a man who had given up, barely made eye contact with anyone in the room. It was over as the courtroom was cleared for the deliberations. The atmosphere was thick with tension. The jury went behind closed doors to weigh evidence to make their decision. Would they convict Cosby, or would they buy into the defense's claims that it was all a setup? Outside the courtroom, news cameras swarmed the steps of the courthouse. Reporters lined up, microphones in hand, ready to capture every detail. Protesters still shouted for justice, while others questioned whether Hollywood would ever truly hold its elite accountable. But the one thing Cavirioni agreed on was this: The truth had finally come to light, and Bill Cosby's empire was crumbling. It felt like hours passed as the jury deliberated, but eventually the doors opened. The foreperson stepped forward holding the paper that would either seal or change Cosby's fate forever. The jury found the defendant Bill Cosby guilty as charged. The words echoed throughout the courtroom, and for a split second time seemed to stop. Cosby, who had spent years hiding behind his wealth and fame, finally faced the consequence of his actions. The room erupted, some in applause, others in tears. Butavarian knew justice had been served. Bill Cosby stood there looking more like a broken man than ever before. His lawyers moved in to shield him, but it was clear the game was over. His face, once full of confidence and arrogance, now showed the weight of his crimes. He was finally going to be held accountable for what he had done. As the judge delivered the sentence, there was a sense of finality in the air. Bill Cosby was sentenced to years in prison. For the victims, for the families, and for our very own who had fought for justice, this moment was a victory. Cosby's legacy, the one he had spent decades building, was gone. His name would no longer be synonymous with family values or beloved TV dad. Instead, it would be forever tied to the darkest chapters of Hollywood history. A man who used his power and influence to conceal his darkest secrets, but even as he was lead away in cuffs, one thing was clear. This trial wasn't just about Bill Cosby, it was about exposing the system that allowed him and others like him to thrive in the shadows for so long. The world had seen the truth, and no amount of money or fame could cover it. At Panamore, the truth is out, but this story isn't over. What do you think? Holes is involved, and what secrets are still hidden? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear from you. Like this video to support the victims and share it to keep the truth alive. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next shocking revelation. The fight for justice doesn't stop here. Let's keep pushing for the truth. Together we'll make sure these stories are never forgotten. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.